Yeah, so I'm Keith Burton, and I'm a associate professor at Michigan Tech. So I do a lot of work in text input, and in particular, text input for people with diverse abilities. So people who are non-speaking, doing work on input for people with visual impairments, that sort of thing. And so, yeah, and I historically, I was actually, my connection with Dasher is I was a PhD student at David Mackay's group. At the Inference Group in Cambridge. So that's how I originally got into Dasher. I actually met David at like a welcome dinner at the college I was at Darwin College, and he was this guy with like this compact, like one of those compact PDA things with Dasher on it, and he was talking excitedly and showing Dasher. And that's basically how I got involved and eventually became his PhD student. So
that's awesome. There's many stories everyone's got about that actually, and David. And I met him very briefly at the end of a conference, and yeah, it wasn't half as interesting as everybody else's story. So it's fascinating then, how everyone came across it. Okay, let's crack on. So here today to talk about the Baton, the AAC sort of text research, I guess we're calling it, right, Keith?
Yeah, I mean, okay. It's a research study, I guess. So I guess what I thought I'd do first is maybe, just a little background or motivation on why we're trying to do this Baton study. So the Baton study is about collecting some actual sentences and communications from actual AAC users. So what we're trying to do is produce a public data set to help sort of researchers like myself produce better interfaces like Dasher or any other kinds of sort of assistive text entry interfaces. And so I don't know, can I share screen?
You should be able to, Keith.
Where do I
It's like a little up. It's annoyingly, it's an up arrow right next to the leave button.
Oh, okay.
Just be careful, because I always press the wrong button.
It's some bad UI, that, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, and I can share individual screens. So I'm sharing just so this is a paper we did a long time ago, along with my colleague Parola, who's now at Cambridge as well. And the real problem in a lot of AAC research is, if we're using these sort of language models to try and drive something like Dasher, we'd like those language models to be good on the actual kind of text AAC users are trying to write. And we don't really have any such data set. And, so in this kind of very old paper, we did something which was, we didn't know would actually work. And I'm the first to admit this is very approximate, right? We actually had workers on the crowdsourcing site, Amazon Mechanical Turk, invent communications as if they were somebody who was non-speaking. So, with all the sort of caveats that go along with that, right? And so the people did invent sort of, kind of things, the imagined problems, they thought these people in this population might have. But, it was a way to get started. And so, these are kind of some of the, the instructions we told them, to imagine you're using some sort of, switch-based communication method and invent some messages.
Right.
And, and I can show you, so now I have to figure out, so sorry, I don't use meetings. I need to switch my screen, stop share. Maybe I can share, probably it's maybe easier if I just share my whole screen.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's some, so some of the stuff, so what do people, when you ask them to do something like that, what do they invent? And here are some of the things, they invented, like, I can't speak, how is your health? Really, that's nice. I'm not well. I try not to cry, but I can't help. So some of these, some of these are, maybe, more their perceptions, but a lot of them are actually, kind of what we're going for. We were just eating dinner. They're very kind of conversational. So if you were trying to communicate with an AAC device, some of these are kind of the style of text you might want to write with such a device. And so we were able to actually use that sort of data you can use this sort of data both to test how well your models are doing, but you can also use them to sort of build better models. You can use this data basically to find other data on the internet. And that's kind of the game we played in that paper I was showing you. So we can use this, and this is a small amount of data. And so the goal of our study here is not to collect maybe, millions of words of data from AAC users, but we want to collect, a small amount of data so we can maybe bootstrap and get more data, from other places like the World Wide Web. And so what we did in that paper is we used, this small amount of data, and you can see, it's about 143K, that file. And then we can data select from things like the World Wide Web. And when you do that, you can get, so these are just sentences other people wrote just on web pages. And you can see kind of the style of the text. It's kind of short, but it's more conversational, a lot of first person, pronouns and things like that. As opposed to if you didn't have that data to try and select the web data, if you were just to look at, I think the random file has that. If you just take web data in general, here's just some random web data. You get text like this: the box scraper is perfect for light grading or leveling of dirt, sand, gravel, etc. Okay, you could train Dasher's language model on that, and it will know some things about the letter sequences in English, but it's not that representative of sort of the the style of text people may be writing. And if you look at what this is the training text the Dasher interface comes with, and so this was put together by David and other people in the inference group, and it's just a load of text they grab presumably from the web or other sources. And they did do it does a pretty good job. There's some first person stuff here, but it is kind of like just a kind of a grab bag of web data as well. And how this all plays out is when you train Dasher on these different training texts, you get very different sort of behavior. So for example, let's start up. Here is this is standard Dasher. So somebody want to like throw out like a communication kind of message you want me to write in normal Dasher, and I'll write it.
I just saw someone this morning and they said, stop, can you stop moaning at me?
Okay. All right, so let's do that.
That's what he wants to say to his wife, right? That's what I had this morning.
Okay, so can you stop?
Oh my God, you're fast. Yep.
Moan.
Moan, yeah. So that's not finding moan, right? Because that's...
Yeah, moan's not going well for us. We're getting there, right? But I'm kind of expert at Dasher, and I know where all letters are pretty good, though I still some...
Stop moaning, okay.
Stop moaning.
But can you stop quick, right? That was pretty quick. Can you stop?
Yeah. So that's with the standard Dasher language model, and so now we can see, and we'll see if my how well my demo works here. But so using the same amount of data, but using that data we got from kind of surrogate AAC users, same amount of total training data, but selected from the web in sort of a smart way. Let's see if that feels any different. Can you stop moaning?
Yeah.
Stop. Let's see if moaning goes better for us. Moaning's still not very good. But
no. But I noticed that can you stop? Actually, it looked like there was a lot of smaller letters to even get to can you stop, Keith. There was quite a lot of. They weren't out large letters, right? Is that because the data set's bigger? Because you've got.
So this is the same size data set.
All right. Okay.
So we can, and I have another demo. The other reason, we could now crank this data set up, and that's something we're doing in the new versions of Dasher, is we're going to start doing language models that trained on a lot more data. So for example, here's one trained on 1 million letters. And this This is, I think, a bug in Dasher 5, by the way. This shouldn't be uniform like this, but
Right.
I think that's a known bug in Dasher, but
Yeah.
I think it gets better once we start navigating.
Okay.
You know, we can see if maybe moaning is easier to write given we have more data. Not so much.
It could, Keith, just to correct me though, right? It can only come up if the word moan is somewhere in that data set, right? It's not
Correct.
magic in that respect.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and so, you know, and if we were to look, you know, so we could, you know, check that data set. And I think that's common CE 0.01 million. Okay, so moaning never occurred, but you know, so that only happened in one particular instance.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Gotcha.
that's, I mean, I don't want to spend too long on sort of, you know, the overall motivation, but these language models, they work better with more data and more data that's sort of in domain, you know, what people are going to write. So that's one motivation for collecting this data. The other motivation is also to help us evaluate. So we can have different language models trained on, you know, for example, I could train a language model on Twitter or, you know, Reddit posts, and I can compare how well these different things do. But you want to test that on data that is representative of, you know, the people you're trying to help write. And we don't even have test sets that are in domain. So for example, a couple we used in that paper I was showing you, here's one called specialists. These are phrases invented by sort of AAC practitioners. So people who work with people who use AAC devices. And, you know, again, you can see it's conversational. These weren't written by users. These were just made up by the people who work with those users. So that's something. And we have another test set called, I don't know, we call it COM, but these are basically messages invented by people in response to everyday communication situations. So you lay out a scenario like you're ordering at a restaurant, what might you say? And, you know, that's what this test set is. So kind of a second motivation is not only can collecting this data sort of help us build better language models, they also can help us test and validate improvements using actual sentences that people have written using Dasher or some other AAC interface. Okay. So that's the high level motivation, and then maybe I'll just switch to, you know, I'll talk a little bit about the details, and then what Max is going to do is basically hopefully give us a demo of the Baton app, which he built to basically allow people to donate sentences. And so this is actually, as far as I know, the first effort in the world to try and produce a public data set to help with this sort of research. And so we, through several iterations, have gotten approval from Michigan Tech's ethics board to run this study. And, you know, so you can go to this URL up here to, you know, read more about it. And our whole goal here is just to collect some sentences, you know, from actual people who are using AAC text entry interfaces. And you could donate a few sentences or a lot of sentences. We'd like to have, you know, some number of sentences from as many people as possible to kind of represent the range of, you know, how people write or what people write about using different devices and things like that. There are some requirements, right? We can only have people do this study who are 18 years or older. And we're looking for people who are, you know, using an AAC device. And currently we can only kind of suck your data from a simple text file. And so Dasher is, you know, kind of our first interface we're collecting from because it does produce a simple text file, and Max will show you it. Hopefully will actually find that text file and you won't even have to locate it yourself, I don't think. And we're only interested, so at this point, we're only collecting data from people with no cognitive impairments. And you should be able to run this on any operating system. And, you know, I'm the sort of principal investigator on this study, but Will has graciously agreed to also be on the study. I don't know what we're calling ourselves. He's on the advisory board, as well as Owen Kent, who is entrepreneur and researcher who works in assistive technologies. And just a few details. Obviously, one of the things we're very concerned about in this data collection is kind of privacy, right? People using these devices, right? Like if you're non-speaking, you're using it to communicate, with everyone in your world, right? And so, many things in that data is private. And you can click here and find out more about when you do decide to donate some sentences. You have various choices. The first choice is you just upload a sentence, and that sentence goes into a big global pool, and we have no way to know how many sentences you contributed or whose sentence goes with who. It's just a big grab bag, kind of like some of those data sets I was showing you. And that's sort of the highest level of sort of privacy you can choose. You can also choose to associate each of the sentences you donate with an anonymous ID. So we will know, you have some big random string, and these 100 sentences all came from the same person. We just don't know, who that person is. And then kind of the final level is you'll have an anonymous ID, but we'll also, you also give us some details to let us know sort of, some basic demographic information and how you're using your device and so on. And these are all optional fields. Your data is, not immediately put out on the web or anything like that. It actually gets encrypted in transport and on storage on our cloud server. And only we can sort of decrypt this, meaning sort of me and my research team. And so what we're going to do is periodically review this data, and that's what Will and Owen are going to help with. Is we're going to go through the data before we ever release it and make sure you haven't accidentally uploaded something maybe you shouldn't have. You've got a sentence with a credit card number or something like that. So we're going to scrub that data before.
Good stuff.
Before we do.
I think Darren was just asking for a link, Keith. So I'll just put that up there.
Yeah, because I can't see the chat.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I wondered if you were looking at that.
Yep. So that's pretty much that's the study, and the recruitment is basically, so certainly anybody on this call or anybody we very much like people to volunteer to take part. It is just volunteer. You don't get paid or anything like that. But if people are interested, then the next step is just to email me at vertanen@mtu.edu, and then we'll give you the link to download the software and things like that. So questions, so maybe I'll stop sharing so I can see chat and things like that. Questions on that?
Is there any particular type of sentence structure that you're looking for?
Good question. Like, yeah, do we want, I think we're interested, we're really interested in a diversity, right? Like, so there are different things you might use it for, right? Like, so some people are using it for sort of person-to-person communications, and other people are using it to write emails or documents or things like that. I think we're interested in all those use scenarios. I think, in particular, the person-to-person communication are the things that are least well modeled, because we have pretty good data sets in language modeling on emails and things like that, and Twitter messages. But this back and forth two-way conversational stuff is really underrepresented. But we'll take whatever we
Okay. What about abbreviations like how are you, HOW space R space U ? Will that mess up your data sets?
If that's what you write, then that's what we want to see.
Okay.
Yeah. We will for sure be doing, before we can use it, there's always, a lot of work in sort of doing some filtering or pre-processing. So it might not be the case we would use it in all scenarios, but it depends on what we're looking at. We look sometimes at interfaces that are doing sort of abbreviation expansion or things like that, and then that's exactly the kind of data we want. So that will be something, researchers will be able to maybe, post process. So I would not worry, like if you wrote it on an AAC device, that's what we want.
Go for it. That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So Keith, how much data do you actually need to make, like a word prediction model? Like in reality, like what are we looking for here to make something like a better prediction system? The way I keep pressing them is in my head is that we're going to make a better prediction system, so we need more data. Like, what do we need then? What actually overall, what are we looking at requiring to make that better?
So in that paper we did where we had the crowdsourced workers invent things, right? Like our training set there was around 30,000 words. But that is not enough to actually train a good predictive language model, but it's enough to basically data select. So it's kind of a bootstrapping thing. We train a language model on that small set, and then we data select from the entire worldwide web. As a test set, even, some of these test sets we're using are in the order of hundreds of sentences. So as a test set, even if we get a couple hundred sentences, it's useful. But to train language models, we do, want more. So Darren's got a question in the chat.
That's fine.
I think
that's good to know. So
categories.
Go for it, Darren.
Yeah. So I was thinking about that, Darren. Like, I don't think when they upload stuff, maybe that's a 2.0 feature we need in Baton, is like people are going to upload a bunch of sentences. Like, were they emails or were they personal communications? And like, we won't know that currently, right? We would have to figure that out just by the sentences. But you're saying, you have basically, so you have something in sort of a separate file that's organized by category. Okay. And that's something, we could maybe work together to figure a way to get those without you going via this app. So I've done that actually with another user who's basically sent me all the speeches he ever wrote in Dasher. So I think we're flexible there. Like if it's easier to do it that way, and you're also still happy to sort of be part of the study and have the data end up in the data set, I think we can find other ways to get it in. I think.
I certainly know that's going to be a question from other people, Keith and Max. Like, I've already had people keen to kind of share their data and go through the consent process, but using different systems. So I guess that's a conversation we can have in time about how we convert those things. But for sure.
I do think, from sort of a privacy ethics perspective, I don't think, we don't want to receive your entire Dasher, file or whatever, all the text you've ever written, and ask us to go through and filter that. Because that would expose us to, everything you've ever written. So that's one of the designs of the app Max is going to show you, is that you get to select what you upload. So I think there needs to be, as long as, the person donating the data has to, decide what to provide.
Because
you
put the onus on them. Yeah. I guess that leads us over to Max to maybe kind of give us a quick demo, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Sure. Let me share my window. Okay, so like Keith was saying, the first step if you want to participate is to email him. And then we'll send you a link to download the app, and then also send you a 6-digit code to unlock the app. In this case, I already have one generated, so I'm just going to copy it over. And this is just the same disclaimer that's on the website, just explaining what we're doing and how we're collecting data. And there's also a bit more details on how the data is encrypted if you're interested in that. Again, like I was saying earlier, you can include an anonymous ID with your data, or you don't have to. In this case, I think I'm going to go ahead and select yes. And then all these fields are optional. Just fill them out if you want us to have the information. Don't fill them out if you don't. I'm not going to fill out any of them. And here it detects that I have Dasher installed. And so what that allows us to do is to automatically import your past and future data that you enter into Baton so that you can review it and upload it. So I'm going to say yes. And now it says I have 4 new sentences to review. These are just some junk text entry that I input into Dasher. If we go to settings, there's just a few things. I think we need to update this email, but this will be a contact email that you can contact us with if you have questions. And then also list your ID in case we need that. And then under data sources, you can manually add simple text files if you need to. It should detect Dasher by default, but it won't detect text from anywhere else currently. And then you can also delete all data that you have stored locally. And then in a second, you'll see what this does. But if this is on, it will default to selecting all sentences when you're reviewing them instead of selecting them one by one. So if we go into the review interface, we can do that by clicking Review Now. And this just shows us the sentences that we input from Dasher, and this is sorted by most recently inputted. So this is the last sentence that I've input into Dasher, and this is the oldest sentence. And yeah, I can just select one by one, or I can do select all here at the top. And then once I'm happy with sentences that I've selected, I can submit. And in that case, I only had 4 sentences. If there were more, then I would have went on to the next page. But here, there's no more data, so I just went back to the main dashboard.
So just to be clear there, Max, you have to, like, even if you select all, it's only selecting those ones that you can visibly see, right? You're not selecting all the ones on the
right. Yeah, so select all only selects one on the page, not everything in the entire data set.
The point is there, you have to actually physically see all the sentences that you submit. It's not a blind process, right?
Right, exactly. You'll always be seeing the data you submit. It's never going to submit anything without consent. And then if you click on Edit Submitted Sentences, you can just double check the sentence that you submitted and delete them in case you upload one by accident. And that's pretty much all there is to it. It's pretty simple. Are there any other questions?
No, not for myself. That's pretty clear. So if people did have a text file though, Max, that they created, like, so Darren there mentioned, he could get a text file.
Right.
There's no problem with that, right? It's not come from Dasher. There's no technical problem.
Yeah, that works fine. So like I can go into edit sources, and then right now we just have plain text available, of course. I can select a file, and I guess I'll just do the unlock code file that I made earlier today. And then I can add that, and then it will automatically scan this file for changes every time you open Baton. Okay. And now we see that I have a new sentence available.
So when you say it's looking for new changes, it's like new lines that weren't there before, right? Just to be clear. Okay, cool. Okay, that makes sense. Ian, Darren, have you got any particular questions at all?
One quick question. So does it have to be line by line if you're importing a text file, or can you import a paragraph?
Importing paragraph should work fine. It scans sentence by sentence, not line by line. So it looks for end of line markers like periods or exclamation points, that kind of thing.
Perfect.
So yeah, that should work.
Okay, neat.
Thank you.
Neat. And I guess a more general question. I know questions, I'm trying to think of other things that other people will say. So the data where it's been stored, I guess that's at Michigan side. And that's you've got that encrypted, right, Keith? So only what you guys can see it once it's encrypted, is that right?
Yeah, and so I mean, it's actually it's being stored on an Amazon cloud server, but the way we're doing, if you read the sort of in details in Max's app, we use basically public-private cryptography. So basically, we have the private key like stored, sort of offline. So basically, as your data gets encrypted and your sentences are encrypted such that the only way we could decrypt them is if I pulled them and then pulled this private key off my offline storage device, right? So even if all servers can be hacked, right? Even our Amazon server, while we follow best practices and all that, right? Like even if somebody were to obtain those encrypted sentences, they can't decrypt them because the key isn't on the server.
Okay.
And so, we will review them locally, and then, once we decide they're going, these are all okay, and we're going to put them into the, the releasable data set, then yeah, they will be, available and out there, but not prior to that. And so that just protects people in case they do kind of slip up and select a bunch of sentences and realize, oh, I shouldn't have done that. There's no real chance they can leak out there, get, stolen by somebody, until we review them,
Okay.
myself and the other people on the advisory team. So yeah, we've taken very care, and this is one reason this has never been done before in the world, is because this is, this can be sensitive information, and we appreciate that.
It's important. It's important stuff, Keith. Yeah. Can someone after, can they request for it to be deleted if they needed to? Is that possible, Keith?
They can request, certainly I think in the app, and Max, correct me if I'm wrong, if you upload something accidentally, the app keeps track of everything you have uploaded, and you can request it to be deleted.
Right.
And so we're only going to periodically, like probably, only on every so many months review the data. So we won't review it, until it's been on, been out there for probably several months. So you have a good window to delete anything accidental. And we will, if you request things to be removed from the public data set, we will honor that request. Just understand that, once, something is public on the internet, we can't control all copies that exist in the world. But we'll, at that point, have already reviewed it. So do be sure, you only upload things that you're comfortable, having, people see.
Okay. Keith, on the data submission, you said it's anonymous, or you can have a certain level of privacy that you've associated with it. The data about like age and location, if you filled that in, is that going to be in the public data set too? Or is that something only for you, or is that available for anyone?
I think that is the intent is to be part of the public data set. So you could imagine researchers, wanted to do some kind of modeling, based on attributes in there. So it would be valuable. So again, yeah, like if you're not comfortable with that, then just don't provide that information.
Okay, that's sensible. I certainly know that in the past, some of the other AAC companies, they have their own sort of login software. Their purpose is slightly different. They want to look at like best way of laying out the words or the language and the way of accessing it. I guess some of those things are not going to be that easy in this data set to do, but that's not my primary aim. And I think it's important to kind of point here. Our primary aim is to build a better corpus for word prediction. Ultimately, right, Keith? Yes, and there are some other research angles, and if they come out of it, then fine. But that's our primary aim.
So I think it's about building sort of better general models, but also, another aspect we can study, and that's one reason. Like, it would be nice if you're comfortable with an anonymous ID associated with all your sentences. That is really handy for us because interfaces like Dasher and any good text entry interface is personalizing and adapting as you write, and so we as researchers can explore how to improve that personalization, having a large set of data from one particular user, and so that's an aspect we can study and improve using this data set as well.
Darren, did anyone answer your question? I lost connection for a little bit in the middle there. I don't know if Keith did about that. It was about how Darren's got an app, Keith, and he's got categories and he exports that. Did you pick up on that at all?
Yeah. I think I answered his question. If not,
Okay.
chime in, Darren. If it's a text file, you should be able to point Max's app at it and
Should find stuff.
import it. And like I said, if not, then maybe we can figure out some
It
way.
makes-
But we do want people to choose what
Yeah.
they donate and review it on on their own before providing it to us, because we don't want to handle that
Yeah.
data that has you haven't vetted for your own privacy.
One thing that makes me aware of, though, Keith, just to know that, is that some of this data is not in a system like that where Darren's talking about. Darren may not have actually pressed that button to speak it, right? He's prepared it, or somebody else has prepared it. So that may be a small issue, right? That we're going to have to cope with, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So that's yeah. I mean, would it serve the objectives maybe to have that data? Yes. But like at the same point, that's kind of what I was saying before. Is it would be nice to somehow, in some way, have some kind of knowledge about which sentences were in that sort of
request.
that's currently not. Certainly, these are all. And if people have ideas for like how to make this app better, this is like V1 here. We have launched the minimum viable product thanks to Max's hard work. But we're certainly willing. Like if you have ideas on like other features like that, or other ways this could work, or different AAC interfaces we should be trying to read data that's maybe in a different format. We're happy to take feature requests, but we just wanted to get the first version out there and get kind of our feet wet and get some people using it, seeing like, for example, are you having trouble using the web interface to click the buttons, or there's ways we can optimize that process, right? Like, because we've got people with all kinds of different access technologies here, and so we want to make sure it's as easy as possible for as many people as possible.
Okay. And just on the same line, I know I've got some thoughts, because just for everyone who's watching this later, the way Dasher is, it kind of stores messages you've written, so it's like a message history. So I think if anybody else is looking to export data, it's largely message history, which will be the same thing rather than a banked load of messages you may not have written. Darren's just written, so when I write something with public speaking, I make a draft with pronouncing and pauses. Should that be included, or should it not, Keith?
Yeah, so we had the same issue with one of the other users who gave us a bunch of text. Just leave it in there, like these sort of pause tags. So I know what you're talking about. You can have like these things in that sort of signal the text to speech to do something special. We just leave it in there. There's no facility currently to do any kind of editing when you select sentences for upload. And that's usually something we can easily, as I said, like in this, we can do a post-processing step where you can probably easily just delete, those text-to-speech tags and things like that. Because as long as there's sort of, some consistency in how they appear, then that's something we may do in our data cleanup before we put it out in a data set. So these are all things, these are all great questions, and we haven't done this before. So I think we're going to run into this and some other stuff we hadn't thought of. But I really would, just encourage people, if you're willing to do it, send us what you've got, and we will deal with what we get.
Is there? I guess people have questions like that, Keith. I've submitted this data, but by the way, it's like all predicted, or it's all that. I guess just email you guys. You can have a think about it and see if you can adapt it.
Yeah, because at some point maybe we want to add some more features to track such things via the Baton app. But for now, you could just let us know that is the case, and then we can start thinking about other things we might want to add to this. And similarly, if there's researchers out there that think we're missing aspects of sort of metadata we might want to track in this data set, let us know. I mean, the goal is to make something that's useful not only for sort of our Dasher team, but also for everybody doing sort of trying to improve predictive interfaces in this domain. So
okay.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Question. I assume that the answer will be no, but is there a way to pull data from Dragon to import?
I don't think. I mean, haven't used Dragon in a long time, but I'm not sure it's logging what, like, you speak and it goes into the document you're writing, right? So it would be really that would have the text is wherever you write in Dragon, you would have to somehow get that into a text file currently. I don't think they log, all. Not that I know, but.
Okay.
I guess the interesting point there, Keith, is that's an interface not for necessarily speaking, because that's text input. And I think that's something, so those who don't know Dasher too well, Dasher is a writing aid as well as a speaking aid. So, we've got that complication. Also, again, this might be something we need to extend later on, right? Was this text for speaking or right? How are we going to deal with that? I think the point here is we're trying to get the sort of words, the sort of phrases that you are expressing, and I'm putting that more broadly.
Yeah, and I mean, we can get fine-grained knowing, like, this is, interpersonal communication versus an email. Ideally, we would know that in data, but if we have a bunch of data that have both, at least we can produce a model that's kind of good at both. And kind of next level would be looking at, like, trying to tease those two apart. Certainly something we should talk about in the Dasher language modeling middle tier team is how to support, people targeting, different, they're using Dasher to speak or they're using Dasher to write emails. How you predict words is different in those two circumstances.
Cool. Okay. Sounds good. So I think Darren's asking another question. There are Dragon audio sampling based saved temporarily. Okay, so there's a temporary file possibly somewhere for that. Okay, I think the point is that there are going to be some questions about this. As Keith said, this is the first time it's been done. It is a kind of minimal viable product in that respect, and primarily they focused on Dasher because it's made sense, as Keith knows its background, and there's that project going on at the moment. But of course, if you've got any more questions or any more thoughts about this, you can email the team. You can find more information at aactext.org. Right. Okay. Cool. My lights have gone out, which tells me this must be the end of this meeting. I don't know what happened. I don't know. Is there any other kind of questions anyone's got?
Just quickly, in terms of people's names, how useful is somebody's name to your corpus? Would that be something that would be filtered out before it's added?
So, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I guess it's, if people are uploading sentences that contain their full name, would we consider that something we would exclude? I mean, that's something I think, Owen and I, it's something we need to think about. Certainly like first names, I think we probably want in there, right? Like, like to degree, if you don't have names in there, it's going to not be good at predicting names. I think,
think in terms of a sentence that someone may have concerns over privacy for, and if the only option is to delete the sentence completely.
So we don't currently have. So that's a good suggestion, and a feature request would be like you could redact parts of sentences. That's currently not a thing we do. It's all. We went for a simple. So you get a sentence or you don't do the sentence. That's certainly something you could imagine adding.
Or allow like a user-created sort of blacklist of words that I don't want in there, so that could be people's names.
Yeah, and I guess actually Max didn't mention one thing. We do some basic, I think, checking for things that look like, phone numbers or email addresses or things we suspect are a privacy problem. And then they are flagged in that UI. There's a little warning message, right, Max, that shows next to them?
Yeah, I think it does phone numbers, emails, and street addresses currently, and then it just flags them with a little icon next to them to make sure you don't accidentally upload them.
Yeah.
Cool. That's a neat idea. If you're talking about Stevie Nicks, you definitely want to keep that, says Darren.
So, and it's also, I would also point out to all the users out there, it's your opportunity. Like, if you donate data, researchers will start building systems that are really good on the stuff you like to talk about, like disproportionately so, right? Like, so this is your opportunity to bias all future AAC interfaces towards what you like.
I certainly know in the UK we come across a lot of different football supporters, so they'll be like, they'll be putting all their languages around Manchester City or Manchester United. There'll be a fighting for that, so definitely get that in there, as it will change your predictions, so to speak, in the years to come.
That's one of the benefits of taking part in the study.
That's a sales tip, isn't it? Sales message, isn't it? Okay, cool. Thank you. I think we'll keep it quite short and sweet, but I guess Keith and Max, I guess your contact details are on the AAC text website, and I'll share this video around to around and about to people, and we'll take that. Pertaining at mtu.edu, as Keith put on there. Cool.